Welcome, everyone, to Flick Moments and Passionate Pursuits The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we are excited about this topic today. This is a bit of a continuation from last week with the ring and the cup. This like universal lesson is continuing to hang on to us. And we notice that when we haven't quite gotten the full message, a theme will continue and it will stay with us until we get it. And so we don't know if this is the end of it because we don't know if we're going to get it from here, but we do know that it keeps percolating. And so the title of this episode is anything ever really truly lost? Is anything ever really truly lost? So we're going to riff on that because we've got another story to start with that's going to get us thinking about, is that even possible? We talk about that all the time. We talk about like things being lost, physical things, relationships, all kinds of things. We're like, oh, it's lost. But let's talk through if that story that we're telling ourselves is true. And if it isn't, what does that mean for our lives? If something isn't really lost, what does that mean for our lives? What are the implications? So let's start with the story. Let's tell them about what happened. You
Okay.
want to get us rolling?
I just want to preface this with I think we have a very playful universe. Like, I don't think that everything always has to be as serious as we make it. And so, when last week we experienced the both of us simultaneously losing something and then finding that thing for each other, I think it opened up like this little playful side of how far can this go? What else could this look like? What else can we do? What do we have access to that we didn't know we have access to? And so you messaged me, was it yesterday or the day before?
Oh man, it was 3 or 4 days ago. You want me to start with what happened?
Sure. Go.
Yeah. I messaged you because, last week's story, what happened is there was something that I lost that she knew where it was, and there was something that she lost that I knew where it was. But yet we didn't know we knew, but yet inside some part of us did know, right? So some wiser part of us had access to that. So this a couple days ago, I'm looking all of a sudden for a Penzies gift card. Now, Penzies is a spice company, and I'm out of curry and paprika, and I need that. And so I'm like, where's that gift card that Bridget so nicely got me? And I was like, I want to use that. So I'm looking for like 15 to 30 minutes for this gift card. I'm looking everywhere that I think that I would put it, which usually means in one of the 300 books I have in my apartment. So I'm looking through all my books and I'm looking through where I would keep gift cards, and it's not in any of those places, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, how do I find something lost? And as soon as I asked myself that question, I was like, oh, well, Bridget should know. I mean, if this thing that we're discovering is true, that you have access to something without resistance that I don't have access to, but you have access inside me, you have access to that information, then why don't I just ask you? So I send a text to Bridget that says something along the lines of, might you know where my Penzies gift card is?
Yep.
I don't know where it's at. And then you go.
And then I respond with, "Oh dear." But then I'm thinking, okay, I don't know why this dropped in, but instantly it dropped in and it was an it'll turn up with an emphasis. Like I saw bold capital letters turn up. And I'm
Now,
like,
did you just get that immediately or did you sink into like meditation?
nope, immediately. It just dropped in. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. But okay. So I messaged her. I got an it'll turn up with an emphasis on the turn up. And that's it. I left it at that. I also, by the way, right after that, saw in my mind you might have to flip something over to find it, which becomes relevant, but I didn't know it was relevant. So I just left it at the turn up and let her run with it.
So when she says it'll turn up, immediately I think stereo music. I'm like, let's turn it up. Immediately in my mind, I'm thinking music, let's blast it. And so I was like, okay, it doesn't work like that in most houses anymore. You don't turn it up with a knob. But I knew from that visual what it meant to me was music. So I went right to what came into my mind's eye, which was my Bose speaker. So I have a speaker on the window in the corner, just right here next to me. I go right to that speaker. I stand there, I look around, and I'm like, where's it at around here? I mean, this is like, there's not a lot of stuff like here. All of a sudden, I remember earlier in the day when I was first looking for it, I felt a dark, deep, like a purple or some sort of a dark color folder, right? So I turn and I look, and there is a triangle, one of those big pads like you have to write stuff on that I have for my book. And inside of that triangle, I had stuck some two folders that I wanted to process things to do inside there. And on top is a dark maroon slash purplish slash brown folder. I immediately open it up. And when I open it up, in the front is a white envelope that says Penzies, which is the gift card inside of it. And I'm like, I never would have looked inside that trifold thing. I never would have looked in there had you not said to go somewhere where it says turn it up, where I looked at the speaker. Otherwise, I would have not been at the vantage point or the angle to be able to see that from anywhere in my apartment. That is the only location that I could have actually seen that angle from, was right there. And so I immediately found it at that point, to which in my mind, I'm incredulous, although I'm not. I get it. And I'm like laughing because I'm like, okay, this is the thing. When I lose something, I just let Bridget know, to which I think, wait, is there really anything ever truly lost? What are the implications to this?
Yeah, can we talk about that? Because this is fun.
Yeah, let's do.
Because she sends me a smiling picture back holding the gift card, and I lost it. I was like, this is insane. Okay, I mean, the last incident was a little bit less wild to me because we were co-located, so we're in the same space, so it just felt more plausible. But
Yeah.
this one, I was not anywhere near you. I had no clue where you'd set it. I didn't know where you'd been. No idea. I mean, it could have been anywhere. It could have been in your car. It could have been anywhere. But I just went with the first thing that dropped in and trusted it. And I think here's the benefit of practicing with someone with whom you're close who won't judge you, is that you just get to offer something. And if it's not it, it's not it. And if it is, then that's fun. Whereas I think if you're in a different setting where you feel more trepidation over, oh God, am I going to be right? Am I going to be wrong? What are people going to think? Then it doesn't allow us to practice these universal like concepts in a safe space. So I
Yes.
think it's so much fun that we're getting to learn and practice these things together. And my theory behind how this all works, I think we dove into this in the last episode, but is that like this physical reality that we're in is 100% completely connected to itself. Everything in it is actually physically, I'm going to let him out, actually physically linked to each other. So there is no emptiness in this reality.
Mm.
Now, I know people will say, well, space is a vacuum, so that's technically empty. But it's not, because it's linked by mind. Like, we are just beginning to understand the implications of what universal mind is. But our neurons and the way that they function is like antennas, receivers, to be able to access depths and breadths of things that we can't fully comprehend. And so, no, nothing actually is ever truly lost, at least not in this incarnation, because everything is totally linked by energy and vibration. There is no magnitude of space to which vibration cannot travel.
So what you're saying is yes, you could wrap your head around that because we're co-located, that that's possible and plausible to be able to figure out within each other's energy, that you can sense my energy and where something is, and I can sense within your energy. But if we have this dramatic 12-hour difference, 750-ish miles, right, difference that we have between us, then in that kind of a space, we're still able to see it without any kind of resistance. It's not a thing. Like the space itself isn't an issue. It's the same time, right? Same time, different spaces. And now we know that that is not an issue. Like you actually have access within me. And the question becomes, are you, like, to me, I start thinking about the 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 relevance within people's lives, right? So the relevance. So I happen to have resistance in this because I'm looking for it. But I have to presume that there's some part of me, if you have access to what's lost in my sphere, I have access to it too. Now, I happen to have access to it through you, which I knew was my path of least resistance. So when we say the path of least resistance, that's what we're saying. We're saying the path that's going to get us there the quickest. So I knew in that moment, oh no, I've got a clear idea of where this is in certain places that I would put it, but you don't have those constraints like I do. There's no resistance there for that.
Got
But
it.
I could also have no resistance myself and choose to just know that that's the path, release it. And once I give the release to it, then it's not lost to me either. And I don't need a conduit, but sometimes we do need conduits because we do have the resistance.
Speaking of conduits, I just had this realization. This is why prayer is so effective. This is why we bring
Yes.
others into things and have them enter into it with us, because what we're going through, we're so immersed in the experience that it may be hard for us to shift the vibration and hold that higher, greater purpose for ourselves. But when we ask people to enter into it with us, what we're doing is tasking them with holding the vibration for us so that that thing can manifest. Because we are, every single one of us as humans, we are creators, we are manifestors. That's what we were designed
Yeah.
to do. We literally are creating every iota of a second of our experience. So prayer is effective because we have other people who are contributing to that for us in
Yeah.
just the same way as what we're describing.
Yeah. When you said that, I heard like loss of faith, right? Like, so when you think about the different things that are lost, it not that it's lost, but that it's turned down. Sometimes the world becomes like what's tangibly and physically present. It's almost like we have the invisible world that we came from, our that like our soul self, and then we have this physical manifestation of humanity. And it's like sometimes like it, we're going for this balance, but sometimes it can be like the physical world is like so compelling that this world, this other world, kind of gets dimmed a little. And so we struggle to believe in what we can't see because what we can see is so pervasive. And so prayer allows for what others don't have resistance. It's not their life. It's not so scary for them. So if they're going to not just within our proximity, but from a distance send us energy healing, and they're going to send us some energy, then it's we catch that energy. It's coming around us. It's being sent to our sphere. It's through our energetic and invisible vibrations and connections that it comes to us. And then all of a sudden, we don't know why, but we're just feeling better. And it's that those prayers are like coming to us and amplifying it. We can do it, of course, on our own. But if we're struggling to do that because of how compelling the physical world is, then why not have other people come in? They don't do it for us. We still have to get on in it with them. We still have to get in the energy. It can't happen without us believing too. We've got to get in there too, right?
Here's something else that came up in a conversation this past week, which was I'm at one of my work placements with my amazing co-facilitators, and we're having a conversation, and one of them says, you know, when we experience this world, everything we experience as though it is us and it's happening to us.
Mm.
So think about that for a moment. If I am entering into something with you, either by choice or just by proximity, even though I can say, well, that happened to you, I still have a visceral reaction to whatever that thing is. I just do. Because it's as if that thing is also happening to me. This is on the flip side, this is why when people watch major traumatic events in the news, they have
Yeah.
more incidents of PTSD from those events than the people who were actually present for them.
Yeah.
There is something that happens within us that we feel deeply, and that can also happen with the positive side. So with prayers, or with people coming around us and supporting us and loving us and lifting us up, it's an experience that we're all having because we all are one. It just points back to that universal truth that all of this is one. So what we're experiencing, I think, is a glimpse at the ultimate reality of that
Mm.
oneness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you're somebody who likes the thought of the interconnection and belonging and a sense of togetherness, then that's a wonderful thing. But if you're devoted to this egoic world where we're separate and something about us stands out and you don't get any credit for anything that I do, if you're devoted to that worldview, then what you're describing doesn't sound good. There's two different kind of orientations, right? And I don't want to go too far down that just from it kind of feels like a topic switch. So I'm going to pull it back a little and we'll put a pin in that. But I do want to share something when you were talking and you were talking about, PTSD and how some individuals can actually feel it so deeply because of that interconnection that it does something within them. You're describing those mirror neurons, right? Like I see it that you're pain, and then it activates within me. So something within me identifies with what you're saying, and I can it brings that up within me. And I wonder sometimes if that identification is whether firsthand within this lifetime or other lifetimes, since they're all happening simultaneously, right? We're starting to understand really more of what that means. But it feels more like instead of mirror neurons, it feels like shared neurons. Like what we're talking about are we are so intricately interconnected that we have a shared it's almost like, okay, when you were talking about infinite space and it's constantly expanding and so there is this emptiness, and there's this emptiness in reality, but yet there isn't emptiness in reality. I was thinking about like our brains as a micro macro. When something happens to us, it goes into our brain, and it may have been 40 years ago that happened, right? So are you with me?
I
It may have
am.
been 40 years ago when that happened, right? And so thinking about it happened 40 years ago, but you don't have access to it. But then one day somebody tells a story, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that reminds me of something that happened when I was 8 years old that I have not thought about before. The circumstances, the events, the smells, our senses did something to activate a memory that's inside of our brain. And we know that we only use what, 7 to 10% of our brain, but there's like 90% that's unknown. Well, that's how space is. It's expansive, but just because it's not mapped, just like our brain isn't mapped, our brain is right the heck here. They have brains and they don't know what they do. It's right here, but yet they can't tell what's that's connected to. But yet that memory popping up that we do not have access to, that we thought was lost, which is about 99.9% of our memories. We thought that they were lost, but they're not. They're right in there, and they are linked to some experience within us. And not only that, we may not ever have those flashbulb rememberings, but they will inform us. What our lens is, it is made from all of those deposits of every experience that we've ever had, ever. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, we're taking it in, and it's informing our reality and what to expect in our whole belief system.
Practically speaking, here's something that we can remember from this. It's a very practical, like everyday applicable concept. So I tell my students this when they're studying for an exam or SATs or whatever it may be. You have already sat through all these classes. You have already heard all of this, probably dozens, if not hundreds of times. It's in there. What our students do is to reconnect to that so you can remember it. But it's all already there. I'll tell them, maybe rereading or looking over your notes again may be helpful, but don't do it to try to remember it. Do it to connect back to what's already located in memory, because our brains are such incredible, complex computational machines that it's already there. I mean, they already know it. So what's actually more helpful is to, for example, take the test in the room where you studied for it or where you learned, because the physical cues, the visceral cues of that environment, the sounds, the smells, the sights will trigger the memories of whatever it was that you learned in that space. And you can apply many different things. Think about when you lose something, if you don't have someone to ask where it is, if you walk back into the room you were just in, 9 times out of 10, you'll remember because something about that doorway, that threshold, that triggers the memory of what you were just doing or thinking or looking for.
Okay. So when you said that, I was thinking about the slight variance. This is why I think back when I was in school, when people try to memorize things, I realized when I was trying to memorize things, I didn't really understand it. I hadn't gotten enough repetitions of the material to know what it meant. And so once you get something, and we talk about the 400 repetitions of something. So once you get it and you've done enough, like I know this piece of, like if I'm right here, a nucleus of a topic, and I get it heard this way and 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 this way, and you just keep going 400 times. When I get all of these different nuances of the material, at some point it just all connects, and it's like I understand. And you have this, like in math, it happens all the time. You're like, oh wow, I finally, kids, you see them get multiplication. Oh my God, I get it, And it's like when you have that deep click and that understanding, it goes beyond memorization. You don't need to memorize anymore. It's something that you do remember. And so when you're in a test and they ask a question, if you didn't really understand it in the first place, you may have lost that understanding because you didn't have enough repetitions of it for it to be known yet, right? And so it's like, it's important that to realize that it is in there, but then I think I remember my teacher talking about state dependent, like how whatever state you are whenever you're studying is actually the state that you want to try to be in when you're taking the test as much as possible, because then that's the same way that you learned and the same way that you'll regurgitate the information. It'll come up. As much as you can get that to be the same, the better for recall.
I tell students to take their shoes off when they're testing. It sounds so strange.
No, I love that.
No one next to me is going to like that. I don't care what they think. When you take your shoes off, you instantly relax. It's like you're at home. And I guarantee that if you were studying at home, you were not sitting around or standing with this really uncomfortable clothes on and your shoes on, and you're like standing up. And that's not how you study. You study what? Laying on your bed with your shoes off, legs kicked up. So if
Yeah,
we can get you back to the state of comfort, show up in
I
your,
love that.
take your shoes
Yeah,
off. Yeah.
yeah. But that's another way that if something is lost, it's like thinking about what internal state do I need to be in order to allow for this to be recalled.
It lowers the resistance.
It lowers the resistance.
The resistance to that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where, fear is the biggest that's going to be it's going to be a barrier. Disbelief in myself, barrier, right? So it's like, whatever you got to do to practice, that when that's what you've lost is information. But there's other things that we lose, and that's why I think when we were talking about this topic of is there anything that you ever truly lose, and I was like, okay, we've talked about like a physical a physical thing, right? And now we're talking about access to things and information, which is just, material that's inside of our brain. So you're talking about access to that. But thinking about that physical substance, I'm like, things are just anything that's in our brain is literally connected to that physical substance. It's still attached somewhere. So just because I've left something that I've lost, I'm still somehow physically connected to that thing. Every single person, action, place that I've visited, as long as I haven't cut that energetic cord, it's still attached to me in some way. It's still impacting me, right? And
So,
so even in the absence of me, I'm still feeling it, right? It's like when the storm happened here, I still inextricably felt some of what was happening here, like deeply. Even now when I drive by places, I feel what happened in those spaces. I can feel it. Terror, fear, grief. I can feel all of that. It's like it's still all around that space. And my physical body is now going through what's already still there. That substance is still there.
so I think there are ways to test for the residue of things.
I like that word. I love the word residue.
Not word
Oh
to
my God, it's so amazing. I love that word.
I must have pulled it out of your brain then.
I
I
love it.
I think the way that we test for that residue is just, you know, bring up something in your mind. Like for me, okay, the first thing that popped up was my experience with meeting this elephant on a trip that I was on a couple weeks ago. As soon as I bring that up, I feel the depth of that experience and how profound it was. As soon as I think about it, that's that energetic cord. But I know that I've done cord cuttings, for example, with certain individuals or experiences. And if I think about those, I feel nothing.
Uh,
It's totally neutral.
yeah,
There's no like, it's just nothing.
yeah.
And so I think that speaking of physical objects, and I want to loop back around to this because this was a really cool thing that happened the same day. As soon as I gave you that hint and you found the gift card, as soon as that happened. So at this Verbo that we had stayed at, I had done laundry and I had lost one of my Bombas socks. Okay, Bombas are not cheap, they're rather expensive socks. So I was upset that I'd lost it. I went through every corner of that place, the washing machine, the vent, the clothes that I washed with it. And I'm like, it's doesn't, a physical object does not just disappear, it's somewhere. And I thought the simplest explanation was, well, maybe it's stuck inside another piece of clothing. So I took every piece of clothing that we had brought to that place and stuck my arms in them and shook them out. Nothing, nowhere. And I'm like, okay. I released it. We packed up, we left, we came back home. That day that you found the gift card, I walked into my son's room and laying on the floor of his room was the sock that I had lost. And I picked it up and sent you a picture because I was so incredulous. And I said, "Where did this come from?" And my son says, "Oh, I was hanging up my clothes and it fell out of my sweatshirt." And I'm like, "I checked all of your clothes multiple times. How does that happen?" And the only thing I could think that made sense to me was that there was something in the energy of helping you to find the thing you were looking for that released the same thing for me
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds
Oh,
because it's just
no. No, no,
but
no, no.
but run with this for a second.
Yeah. I am
Allowing
I'm
something
running.
for someone else to bless their life in some way releases the same energy in our
Yeah.
experience as well.
Yeah. And here's the thing, adding to that, it's that it's a step removed. Because it's a step removed, it's like the when you forgive somebody else or when you forgive yourself, there is a forgiveness back towards you that happens. We don't know where it comes from or who's forgiving you or what that looks like, but you're in somebody else's sphere in some deeply profound way that you may or may not ever know about. But that's how it happens. Is this is that it's the balance. It's like with everything, there is balance with everything. And the closer we are, the more precise or almost like the more in real time it is and the more profound it is. So, for example, when you found that for me, then something was found for you. But I was like, I wasn't worried about the Penzies gift card. Just like I wasn't worried about your ring and I wasn't worried about my cup. I was like, it'll turn up. It'll turn up. It's going to turn up because we know we didn't leave. So I was like, I knew the gift card was not outside of this apartment. I was like, it's here somewhere. It'll turn up, you know? So not having a need to find it today, I just happened to want it today because I didn't want to go down and spend $20 on spices when I had a $50 gift card that I could use and get my spices.
Yep.
Which, by the way, until right now, I didn't realize I could have divided that up and kept it instead of spending it all, but whatever.
Well, okay, here's where my brain went with this too. We've heard it said frequently, if you want to feel more fill in the blank,
Yep.
then go give it. If you want to
Yes.
be loved, go love on some people. If you want to feel more joy, go do something that brings you joy or go give joy to someone else. But there is the actual like real experience of how this works. Like, I don't know, I was at
Oh,
the grocery store yesterday and I was by myself and I'm just shopping and I'm like, it was fine. It was fine. But I had the nudge to go to a checkout lane with a person instead of the self checkout. And so I just went to a checkout lane that only had one person in it. And I hear them having this conversation about TV shows or movies or something. And he just seemed so exuberant. Like the guy who was working there was just so like he was very tall, like very imposing, but also just so happy. And so I struck up a conversation with him when I got up there about the show that I'm watching right now. And he lights up and he was so excited to talk about what he's watching. And all of a sudden I just got this little dose of like happiness that I didn't necessarily need, but why wouldn't you want happiness? You
yeah,
know? And I was like,
yeah,
that's really interesting. Usually I just keep to myself, go to the self checkout, get my stuff, go, I'm very solo independent, but I just had a nudge to do that. And it was so nice. Like it was so
lovely.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you were talking, well, several things hit me, of course, but I'll stick with you were saying, whatever it is that you're hoping for in your life, then go do that thing. So, we talk about if you like in this situation you're talking about, if you want happiness and doses of happiness, then go give happiness or be open to happiness
Right.
look for happiness, but you have to be open to it and it not being a particular way. And you can't be like, oh, I will be happy when it's this. It's like, no, just find happiness here and now. But what it made me think of is 87% of people who enter the social service field have at least one trauma, right? And I was like, if you want to feel less lost, speaking of lost, if you want to feel less lost, help others feel less lost. I think about how many times, like, there are so many people, if you want to feel less pain, help others feel less pain, right? And it's not a conscious thing. It's not something that we do consciously. I think most of us just are like, oh, gosh, there's people that are in significant need and we don't want to see people in pain, or we want to help people have a different life, or we want to help give people hope. It's just something super simple. But yet, often when people are doing that in the field, when they're trying to just help somebody else do that, it's like a way is lit for them, and something that's missing or lost in them becomes found by just being on that path with somebody else.
So that gets back to every single one of us on some level has an awareness that we're part of a collective.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's unconscious, but we
Yeah.
act towards it.
Yes. It's pervasive. It's like a tractor beam. It's like something that, you see in those movies where you're like, and the energy is just like pulling you forward, right? It is literally like that when you are wired in a way that you're responsive to your surroundings. And I think that's what I'm realizing, and for myself at this juncture, is throughout my life, I've been incredibly sensitive to this invisible stream on the other side. And I think a lot of people have. A lot of people have been extremely sensitive to that, but we haven't understood that it's a thing. And so we have been responsive to that. But I love that, like, um, mutuality that's there, that we're just like starting to understand that it's never just this, it's always this give and take and share, right? It's always like the sharing, you know?
I have a question,
Mm.
people. This is
Yeah.
my final point that I wanted to
Yeah.
offer. So we've talked about, is anything actually ever truly lost? And I think we're arriving kind of back full circle at the not really, not really.
Mhm.
So for anybody who's listening, what have you lost? And how would you act if you knew it weren't actually lost?
I love that. Yeah. And I would say there's nothing that this doesn't apply to. Nothing at all. I'd love to know, like, what we could come up with that isn't, like, I think about this with lessons. We say, "Oh man, I forgot that lesson." Did you? Because you're remembering it right now, so some part of you is like, "Oh no, I didn't forget the lesson. It just wasn't part of my initial focus. I'm fully aware of that lesson. It's here right now. It's back again. I didn't lose it. I just didn't focus on it enough for it to be dominant in my life." We sometimes use terms sloppily, right? We get a little lazy or lackadaisical and we say things that we make it true, but it's not true. So we don't lose lessons. Lessons are constantly working on us and we're getting those repetitions in, right? So when we don't have it yet, it's just the universe continuing to give us a lesson that's authentic and deep instead of fabricated. Like, I hate the word strategic. Like when we're trying to think of lessons, I'm like, I'm not trying to be strategic about it. I'm not trying to access information for the point of buffering myself and accessing information. I want this full human slash soul experience, which means all the universal stuff I'm learning is because I want to be just as deeply entrenched in the material world as I do in the other world, in the non-physical world. I want to be balanced and co-located in both and see what that life is like, right? So my lessons aren't lost. My relationships aren't lost. You want to believe that? Then the people that are alive that show up in your life you haven't talked to since 30 years ago, but you were close to, and you get a call from them, you pick up where you left off. It was never lost. It was right there waiting for the next phone call, and you pick up, and it's like you're like, here I am. That was never lost. You just put it aside. And that's okay because there were other things that were more important in that moment. You don't lose things. We've made that very clear. You can't lose things because we're intricately connected. And whether or not we have access to it, somebody else who can be part of our energy has access to it. It's there. We have it. Right. But I keep thinking that what's for us, meaning what is important to each of us vibrationally, what we're here for, will find us. The things that don't mean anything won't find us. They may mean something to somebody else, but not us. But if it's something that's important to us, it will keep showing up, whether or not we see it or not. Man, I love this stuff.
Well, that's a good thing.
Oh, man. I got residue all over me. Universal residue, pixie dust.
That's all I got. I think that was
Okay, that's all I got.
beautiful. A special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can learn more about her at melissamossart.com. And thanks to Cloud Cult for our podcast music from their song There's So Much Energy in Us. Learn more about them at cloudcult.com. Yes.
One last thing. In the notes, how would you act if you knew that it weren't lost?
Oh, yeah.
How would you act? Ancestors? Who? What? How would you act if they were actually still linked to you? How would your life change?
Mm,
Anything.
we'll discuss that on a future episode. We got so much to dig into.
Okay.
And
Thank
Beth.
you, Melissa Moss. Thank you, Cloud Cult.
And thank you, friends, for listening. And until next time, peace, love, and light.